Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Sex Ed Lecture Series. We're here today to talk about the social justice program in sexuality education with the instructor, Dr. Tanya Bass. Hi, Dr. Tanya Bass. How are you?
Hey, Bill, how are you? I'm doing well myself.
Ah, Well, we're really excited to learn all about this course, but we want to know a little bit more about you first. For those of us in the field that don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, how you got interested in sex ed? Tell us all about Dr. Bass.
Sure. Well, I guess the short version is I'm a Brooklyn queen, born in Brooklyn, New York, moved to North Carolina as an adolescent, consider myself the good properties of being a Southern and a Southern sexologist. I am a certified sexuality educator, certified health education specialist, ASEC certified sexuality educator. I'm an instructor, a clinical instructor at North Carolina Central University, which is also my alma mater here in North Carolina. I teach human sexuality and serve as the internship coordinator for our public health students. I also have a few other teaching responsibilities at Widener University, my other alma mater, and certificate program at the University of Michigan. I'm the author of Representation in Sex Education, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And I am on the advisory of the Sex Ed lecture series as well as the faculty for the certificate program. So all the things in a quick version of who I am.
That's a very busy schedule. So thank you for making time for this course and for this interview. So let's talk about the course. You're leading an intensive 4-week certificate program on social justice and sexuality education. What made you want to teach this?
I think what made me want to teach is that experience of my early lived experience in New York combined with moving to North Carolina and then, starting my public health and sexuality education career here in North Carolina and thinking about the reproductive justice movement as well as social justice as a whole in work in policy development, advocacy, and activism. I think is an important area in our profession to talk about it. Very few opportunities show up for us to work collectively in our activism and our social justice movements surrounding sexuality education. And it is an area that this work is super important and that I believe our ideologies and the education that we bring can help foster the movement of social justice.
Tell us about this particular course and how is it structured and how do you deliver it?
So this course is both synchronous and asynchronous. Students throughout the weeks that we're together will meet twice weekly for about an hour and a half to discuss readings, content, and recorded webinars. So when they're outside of the course or the class meetings on their own time, they actually get to view videos from the Sex Ed lecture series that align with the content for that week and material that we're talking about as it relates to social justice. And then we have content during our synchronous time to just think about reflecting, dialogue, aha moments, how this shows up in our work, connecting the dots between their readings, their viewing of the webinars, and their lived experience as sexuality professionals, or what they hope their lived experience would be if they have yet to begin their actual profession in sexuality education.
So the program includes 12 webinars and 12 hours of live content over 4 weeks, discussions and such. What guided your choices in curating the webinar selections?
Most of the webinars were selected based on their topical area. I spent some time working with one of the Sex Ed lecture series interns and discussing with you how some of these lectures cross the sector of the different topics that we wanted to talk about in the certificate program. So they're topical and foundational, if that makes sense. So some of the lectures allow for us to build a foundation to begin the course, and then some of them go through different topics related to the course. And then it's also about the diversity of speakers and the worldview perspectives that they bring. If you were to view some of these lectures, and many of us have attended some of the lectures, there's been some dialogue across the content of the lectures and the perspective of the presenter in the lectures. You may not walk away, or the students may not walk away fully agreeing with everything that is presented in the lecture, but that's part of that learning process and that expansion of their worldview is to really reflect on what they can glean from it that will help them and what they glean from it that causes them to have questions or maybe more curiosities about a topic in social justice and sex ed.
So your use of the webinars encourage critical thinking.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Well, you mentioned earlier your book, Representation in Sex Education, and that's one of the readings for this course.
Yes.
Can you tell us about how that book is used in this course and what other ancillary materials or readings are involved in the course?
Yeah, so starting with the book is used as a guide for us to review one, the principles of sex education, to also lay a foundation of like where are some critical areas based on the content and how we put the manual together, how we found some areas that were lacking in sexuality education. And so a lot of the discussions are going to be centered around like how does race and ethnicity show up? How does age show up? How does social economic status or geographic location show up in the different topics that we'll be discussing? It's really trying to build an intersectional approach for the certificate program, as well as giving the professionals, or I'm saying professionals, but the participants, an opportunity to review some of those areas based on what our colleagues in the profession have actually identified and what the literature supports in that. One of the things that I often think about being in North Carolina is geographic location and language, and not necessarily English language as like as the primary language, but even with the use of English in North Carolina we probably have over 14 different dialects across our 100 counties, and so the way we communicate about anything, let alone sex, is going to be different. How does that show up when you're a professional or someone in the community going out and talking about issues around sex ed and you're not familiar with the dialects or the terminology of the community that you're serving? Are you really providing comprehensive, culturally appropriate sex ed when you're not attuned to what's happening in your different communities? So I hope that the book is one of those foundational pieces that I mentioned earlier to allow students to connect some dots, raise some questions, and do that critical thinking that you talked about.
I like your expanded definition of what is included in social justice and what is included in representation. And it also struck me that some of the webinar selections also include a more expansive understanding of social justice. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, and with my public health background, when I think about social justice, I also think about health equity. And there's a colleague, Dr. Paula Braveman, who has a quote that says, "Health equity is social justice in public health." And when I think about sexual health equity or sexuality education and equity, that is social justice in our profession as well, ensuring that people have what they need when they need it, that they are centered in the education and services that are being provided. When I think about social justice, I also think about the mistakes that we can make. So none of us are perfect at social justice. It's a daily process, it's a daily work in progress that we'll probably make some mistakes. There are going to be opportunities where we need to. I got this phrase from another colleague, Marlene Prey, who says sometimes you got to step up, sometimes you got to stand up, sometimes you have to shut up, but you can't give up, right? Like, and sometimes you're even going to mess up in this work, but you learn from those mistakes, and you don't do this alone. There's no social justice advocate that you can find that is solely doing this work on their own. It is a collective work. And so when I think about sexuality education as social justice or a part of the social justice movement, it is a collective. We have to have levels of accountability and continuous learning.
It's making me think of the principles for sex education that you
Mm.
mentioned earlier, and one of them is meeting the learners where they are, which just sounds like you're describing how that principle is incorporated here. And I wonder, is there room in the course for both people who are deeply rooted in social justice and taking action, as well as people who want to get started?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest questions people ask oftentimes, whether it's about sex ed or social justice, and certainly when we combine that, is how do I start? Where do I start? And I hope that this course allows people to find a place where they can start and a place where they can also continue.
I have more questions, but I can't believe I haven't asked about your shirt yet. Tell us about your
Oh,
shirt.
yeah. Very proud of this shirt. Let's see. It celebrated last year 30 years of the reproductive justice movement. And so the shirt represents the names of our founding mothers of reproductive justice. And I'm very excited to wear it. I received this from Sister Saundra, Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective out of Atlanta, Georgia. Monica, oh, I was forgetting Monica's name all of a sudden, but Monica
Monica Simpson?
Simpson is the executive director, and we here in North Carolina proudly have an affiliate and staff on the ground here in North Carolina as well. So we'll talk about reproductive justice as well. And you can't talk about social justice without talking about reproductive justice. So we'll talk a little bit about that and the founding mothers and Sister Song during our time together in the certificate program.
All right. Well, you're steering me back to the certificate program, so let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
You've built a strong discussion component into the program. What do those Zoom sessions look like typically, and how do they support the course's overall goals?
So some of the things that I try to do is to incorporate terms and definitions to lay a foundation to ensure that we're all on the same page, and then have even a dialogue about how we understand those terms and definitions. So, for example, if we talk about reproductive justice, having folks define that for themselves and then bring forth the definition that I utilize, that Sister Song utilizes, and then talk about how that shows up in sexuality education, having participants share examples as well as providing examples in our discussion. I'm actually thinking about even providing scenarios, something that we didn't do as much in the previous cohort, but thinking about scenarios where you can identify how you can bring forth, let's say, reproductive justice, or where do you see reproductive justice at play in a particular scenario. And I'm using RJ as an example because that's what we were just talking about, but it might be disability justice and defining that and having dialogue around that. So I think that the participants will bring both their personal and professional perspectives to this because we all hold different identities and we don't know who's going to be in the course, and we want them to be able to bring their full selves, not tokenize them, but to bring some of their lived experiences, whether personal or professional, to the discussion pieces.
How about, in terms of other aspects of the syllabus? Do you allow if someone has to miss a night, or what are some of the expectations regarding attendance and assignment completion?
Yes, I think we're allowed to miss one course time, and then there's a discussion piece that we will follow up with them on, or just, if it's an emergency and things happen, it's also summertime. People have planned vacations. So I feel like we're strict, but we're also flexible. And that also goes to the social justice component of it. Like, we're meeting at on Eastern time zone at 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. So we're welcoming people internationally and nationally who are in different time zones. And sometimes, even as an instructor, you're a little burnt out or things unexpectedly happen. So we want to provide a level of flexibility for the students or the participants to make up some of their hours if they aren't able to be present.
One of the things that stands out is the self-evaluation at the end. Why is it important for participants to assess their own learning in a program like this?
Oh, yes. So in addition to that self-evaluation, there's weekly reflection again to for folks to really sit with and reflect on what they discussed, what they viewed, and even how they're feeling about it. So it's both cognitive and affective components. And so with that final evaluation, a lot of my most recent work and thinking about completing my doctoral studies is about professional disposition. And you can't, in my opinion, be effective at social justice or really fully effective at sex ed and bringing social justice into sex education or utilizing sex ed as social justice takes a lot of reflection on your disposition, your worldview, and what growing ends you have and where you stand on different topics or areas. So that self-reflection is important. I don't know how many times we've gone to trainings or workshops and we haven't sat with, like, okay, we might even say it's good, but we don't get to say what's good about it. Or we complete an evaluation and most of the evaluation speaks to, did we meet the objectives? And perhaps we met the objectives, but how do we feel about it? And what did I gain from it? So that self-reflection is really for folks to maybe even think about their return on investment of the course. Like, what did I get out of it? What did I bring to it? And allows you to really sit with that and how you're going to use it in the future.
Let's talk about some of the topics.
Yes.
The course covers discussions of ableism, racial microaggressions, gender inclusion. These topics can be emotionally heavy sometimes.
Yes.
How do you support a learning environment that's both challenging and affirming?
So one of the ways I like to open up the especially the live sessions is to do some check-ins about, because it could be heavy that you read something heavy or you view the webinar that was heavy or we're getting ready to talk about heavy. So check-ins, check-outs, certainly encouraging self-care, encouraging people to bring things that are sensory. So thinking about the somatic, being in touch with what they're feeling in their bodies. Sometimes, like even now I'm talking to you, I respect you, I'm excited about the course, but I'm nervous about it, so I'm feeling like this level of tension in my body. You might see me, fidgeting, but it's important for me to acknowledge and encourage people to be attuned to what's happening in their body as they're going through this process of learning this different content. So I want to make space for folks to be free to take care of themselves and also share how they're feeling in the moment.
So you encourage cameras on during the sessions?
I encourage cameras on because it sometimes leads for a more connected experience, but I also make space if someone, again, thinking about even if it's not the content, but just the energy of, like, if someone's been on Zoom all day for other meetings, it can be a little taxing to remain on Zoom. But we're asking people to check in, be engaged in the chat, come on camera, even if you have to cut it off and on to give yourself a break. Also encourage, I was talking to my doctor during COVID about vision and the fact that, we're on our devices, etc. So even want to encourage taking care of your vision health, your visual health. So if you're on camera and you need not look at the screen and look at something 20 feet or more away from you, to even take care of your eye health and help with eye strain. So all those things will be presented, during the beginning of the course and as we go throughout the course as a reminder. Drinking water, all the things that are necessary for us to be fully present as much as we can.
Tell us about the types of students who enroll in this program. What are they doing professionally? Where do they come from? What kinds of perspectives do they bring? And what kinds of students do you hope will enroll?
Oh, yes. So in the past, we've had a wide range of backgrounds of our participants. So some of the participants were actually new to the profession around sexuality education or sexuality as a whole. Some of the students were from the South, someone from up north. Some of them were enrolled in educational programs like at Widener or the Michigan Certificate Program. Some of the students or participants were actually executive directors of youth serving organizations or other organizations. So we've had a wide range and hope that we will maintain that level of diversity in our students. We had students from different racial backgrounds, age ranges. I can't even think of all the different perspectives that we were able to bring in. Some with years of experience in the profession as a whole, but new ish to social justice as well. So, yeah, it was very diverse, and I'm very excited and hopeful that we'll get the same diversity in that way.
If somebody's on the fence about registering, what's one reason you'd encourage them to take the leap?
I think that if they're on the fence and there's someone who is in need of a different type of learning experience, an additional certificate to help them navigate the profession or seek another, even other employment in line with that. And given the time that we're in now, to I'm saying this flippantly, like, what is the fuss all about? But like literally to being aware of what's happening around us nationally and being able to figure out like what are some of the challenges around our work and how we get to navigate them, I think that they would benefit from enrolling in this program.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tanya Bass. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about the program?
I would just say that I'm very excited to teach it. I'm looking forward to a new cohort and looking forward to just really hearing the various perspectives as well as sharing my own as it relates to sex ed and social justice.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Bass. And for folks, if you are interested in enrolling in the program begins July 8th, every Tuesday and Thursday evening through the month for an hour and a half, twice a week for 4 weeks. And then, as we discussed earlier, there's 12 asynchronous webinars as well. If people want to enroll, the website is sexedlectures.org and look for the certificates link. And please also be aware that there are a limited number of scholarships that we offer as well to make the program more accessible. So thank you for being with us, Dr. Bass.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you later.
Take care.
Bye.